Well, I officially returned to my show from vacation today, which means that in preparation for this event, I had to make my official return to Twitter yesterday. I had only ventured, back into that overflowing cyber septic tank for a few hours before my name was trending. And I thought that at first, I was trending because everybody was welcoming me back with well wishes and warm salutations and all of that. But it turns out that most of the messages were considerably less friendly. I guess that's no surprise on second thought. The conversation seemed to revolve around a brief argument that I had with J.K. Rowling on Sunday, because, of course, the first thing that I do when I come back from vacation and I'm really well rested is I pick a fight with a random famous person. But before we get to that, we need to back up all the way to ancient history, which was last Tuesday, when I was still out fishing and the singer Macy Gray was igniting a media firestorm by controversially suggesting that women exist. So during her appearance on Piers Morgan, where I think she was promoting an album or something like that, the conversation kind of drifted to the topic of gender, and Morgan posed the ultimate question, of course, the question of our generation, which Gray had at first no trouble answering at all. I'm sure you've heard this clip already, but let's play it again just for our own enjoyment. Here it is.
If I asked you what a woman is, what would you say?
I would say a human being with boobs. You have to start there.
Yeah, I mean, the dictionary is quite straightforward. It just says a human, adult, female, right?
No, a lot of people, see, that's a little getting confusing. The whole he, she, they, that's getting a little
And I'm not sure why, really. It's a bit like this whole issue of transgenders in sport. It's like I support all trans rights to fairness and equality.
Me too.
But not where you have people born to obvious physical superior bodies.
Me too.
Transitioning and then thrashing the women at their sport.
I totally agree. And I will say this, and everybody's going to hate me, but as a woman, just because you go change your parts doesn't make you a woman.
Right.
Sorry.
You feel that?
I know that for a fact. Like, if you want me to call you a her, I will, because that's what you want. But that doesn't make you a woman just because I call you a her and just because you got a surgery.
So thus began the usual circus routine. After saying this objectively true and normal thing, Gray was reviled by the left, slammed as a transphobe and a bigot, and she's marginalizing and erasing trans people through her refusal to allow women to be marginalized and erased. That's basically the accusation. And meanwhile, on the other side of it, the right hailed her as a hero, a courageous warrior, triumphing over cancel culture. She was applauded for standing firm and being bold in the face of the backlash. But the applause, as is almost always the case, unfortunately, came too soon. Gray made it all of about 3 days before buckling. And on Thursday of the very same week, the singer made the traditional pilgrimage to a morning TV show to express her deep regrets and sorrow and to beg for absolution. She explained that over the previous couple of days, the experience of having a bunch of blue-haired freaks screaming at her had been very educational and it had been very enlightening. She'd learned a lot from the blue-haired freaks. That's my words, not hers. I'm paraphrasing. In fact, she learned that everything she thought she knew about the world was wrong. Biology is a myth, and that she, as a woman, doesn't actually exist. She learned all of this in 2 or 3 days. And they had taught her this by crying and screaming. It was the most educational temper tantrum she'd ever witnessed, apparently. Let's watch that.
I never, of course, meant to hurt anybody with what I said. I'm actually a huge... I think it takes a lot of courage to be yourself, to go out in the world and be honest about who you are. And so I think anyone who is in the LGBT community is a hero and sets an example for all of us with that, So I said some things that didn't go over well, but my intention was never to hurt anybody. I feel bad that I did hurt some people. And I think it's just about education. It's about conversation and us getting to a point where we understand each other. And that only happens with, I've learned a lot through this. So I think that was one of the reasons it might have happened. Just it was a huge learning experience for me. You know what? I think you can, like I said in there, you can call yourself you whoever you believe you are, and no one can dictate that for you or take that away from you. You know.
I think life is an education process. The more you sit with people, the more you talk to people, it changes your perspective. So has your perspective changed, do you feel?
I've learned so much, and I think, you know, being a woman is a vibe, and it's something I'm very proud of, and it's very precious to me, and I think that if you, in your heart, feel that that's what you are, then that's what you are, regardless of what anybody says or thinks. You know what I'm saying?
Well, it's a good thing, you know, that all the groveling bases were covered there. She didn't skip any of the steps. She was very thorough in that way. The script was followed with precision. And though we've grown so accustomed to seeing this pageant of humiliation play out, it never gets any easier to watch, at least not for me anyway. Each time I feel like I'm watching somebody cut their own heart out of their chest. It's grotesque and disgusting and humiliating, but weirdly fascinating. You're just kind of glued to the screen watching this sick display. And you can't look away as much as you want to, because we know the steps here. Step one, the penitent claims that she's learned a lot and she's been educated. That's the necessary first step. Never explains what she's learned exactly or how she learned it or exactly what insights her critics offered to her. That's because there was no insight, unless guttural screaming and demonic convulsing counts as an insight. I don't know. And then step two, she flatters the rage mob. You know, she lays down her offerings at their feet. She bows before them in worship, adoring them, declaring in this case that everybody in the LGBT community is a hero, all of them. Because, of course, it requires true heroism to belong to the most protected, privileged, and coddled and applauded group of people to ever exist on planet Earth. That requires heroism to do that. And then step three, she finally and fully renounces all of her past beliefs. She renounces reality and truth itself. She renounces her own existence, really, proclaiming that contrary to what she had always thought up until about breakfast time that morning, there is no objective or biological basis to womanhood. Being a woman is, as she put it, a vibe. You know, it's just a vibe. A woman isn't anything, but, you know, if you feel like you are one, then you are one, and what you are is nothing. All women are nothing, and everybody is invited to join them in their nothingness. Now, of course, if being a woman is just a vibe, then it doesn't really make a lot of sense for men to take drugs or get surgeries as part of their transition process. There is no such thing as a vibe surgery. You can't surgically implant or remove a vibe, right? You can't go to the doctor and say, you know, I want to have a certain vibe. Can you give me a certain... That doesn't make any sense. If it's all about the vibe, if it's about the feeling, then the whole gender transition industry makes no sense, and it's built on a false premise. So it turns out that either way, whether the claims made by gender ideology are wrong or right, the whole process of gender transition is nonsensical and false, either way. But as we've learned, we cannot expect the proponents of this idea to notice these kinds of contradictions or care about them if they do notice them. This all brings us back to the beginning of our story. I criticized Macy Gray on Twitter for being a gutless coward, which is what she is. And after some pushback to that, I tweeted this. I said, sorry, but women who publicly renounce the definition of woman for fear of mean comments from trans activists deserve all the scorn they get. That kind of gutless cowardice is exactly what got us into this position in the first place. That's what I said. Okay. Now, a little while later, J.K. Rowling, who famously has stood up courageously against the trans mob, responded to me with a defense of Gray and of other women who have similarly folded like cheap lawn chairs. Rowling tweeted in response to me, she said, endless death threats and rape threats, threats of loss of livelihood, employers targeted, physical harassment, family addresses posted online with pictures of bomb-making manuals aren't mean comments. If you don't yet understand what happens to women who stand up on this issue, back off, she said, talking to me. Now, lots of other feminists in the so-called TERF camp, or the gender-critical camp, as they prefer to call themselves, most of them, they've echoed and agreed with this sentiment from Rowling. In fact, I've heard this from feminists quite a lot since my film came out. That it's easy for me. They say, I don't know what it's like, okay? I don't have to make the same kind of sacrifices. I don't put the same things on the line. I don't get treated the same way. Nobody attacks me the way they attack women who speak out. And now Rowling, whose courage on this issue, as I said, I really respect, and I've said that many times, is singing the same tune. But she's completely wrong, of course. And it just shows how feminists who criticize the trans agenda, even though they're right about the issue of transgenderism, they're still hamstrung and handicapped by left-wing identity politics and victimology. They can't accept an alliance with a man because they resent us for our perceived privilege, even though it's a privilege they've completely invented in their heads. Because the fact is that nearly everything she describes, the things that I can't understand, supposedly, because they only happen to women, supposedly, they have happened to me with great frequency and ferocity, I would say, over the past month and before that, but especially over the past month. I've had many death threats. I've been doxxed many times. Okay? The thing is, I don't talk about these things a lot. I mention them here and there. I don't spend a lot of time talking about them, but I can assure you they are happening. I've been threatened, harassed, insulted. They've tried to deplatform me. They've tried to get me fired. They've tried to get my advertisers to boycott me, et cetera and so forth, over and over and over again. I don't doubt at all that trans activists are vicious monsters towards any woman who defies them, but the operative aspect there is defies them, not woman. They cannot tolerate defiance from anyone. The survival of their fragile worldview, as we've seen, depends on silencing all of the opposition, no matter who it's coming from. Doesn't matter if it's the idea that if it's coming from a white conservative man that they're going to lay off. No, he's good. He's one of the good ones. Let's leave him alone. It's just, it's hilarious. But here's the thing. If I had over the past month, or any time in the future, cave to the mob and pull a Macy Gray, I would deserve scorn too. Endless amounts of it. Okay? I'm telling you right now, if I ever were to do that, you should scorn me and despise me for that. Now, it's not going to happen, I can assure you that, because I would quite literally rather be dead than surrender to these people. I'd rather take a bullet to the head than debase myself the way Macy Gray did, and it wouldn't even be a difficult choice. But if that were not the case, and I crumbled under the onslaught and turned traitor on truth for the sake of protecting myself, I would be a worse villain in this story than any individual trans militant. Because, as I said in the original tweet, the cowards are the ones who got us into this mess. Why is that? Well, because there were never enough, and still are not enough, trans militants to forcibly drag our society into the mass epidemic of madness that we're currently experiencing. They can't do it on their own without our consent. As much as they would like to, as much as they're trying to, they can't. In order for this to happen, it has required and will continue to require the acquiescence of countless people who know better, who know the truth, but implicitly, or in many cases explicitly, renounce and disavow that knowledge in order to preserve their own comfort and their own safety. But most of the time, it's just their own comfort, because most of the time their safety is not really in jeopardy. Sometimes it is, but in most cases it's not. You know, I really don't think that anyone was going to go kill Macy Gray because of a 1-minute conversation she had on Piers Morgan. I wouldn't put anything past these people, but I really doubt that was going to happen. What she was trying to protect was her financial security and just her comfort. And really, she just wanted to get along with her Hollywood friends and her friends in the music industry. And that's what she was trying to protect. Every time a coward collapses like this, betraying themselves and all the rest of us on team common sense, when we are betrayed in this way, as we are so often, they only make it that much harder for whoever the mob turns its sights on next. So it's not a victimless crime here. The mob is emboldened and fueled by every person who sells their souls to it. They are vultures who feed on the dignity that you abandon and leave on the floor. They feast on your subservience. and your submission and your self-debasement. The only way to stop them is to starve them of this fuel, is to look them in the eyes and say, no, I apologize for nothing. I am right, you are wrong. Now go scream about it some more, you damned hobgoblins. I don't care. You don't scare me. And laugh in their face. That's how you handle it. Anything less than that, and you're part of the problem. Well, I hope you enjoyed that clip from the Matt Walsh Show. If you did, be sure to subscribe to this YouTube channel and click the notification button to get more content like this. If you want to watch or listen to the full show, head to dailywire.com and subscribe today. You can also listen to my podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts.